Imagine a forest where the trees do not bear fruit, but bodies. 20,000 men, women, and children suspended on sharpened stakes, swaying in the breeze of a Wallachian summer. The stench is so thick it can be felt in the back of the throat. The silence is broken only by the sound of crows and the rhythmic creak of wood under the weight of the dead. When the Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II, the man who conquered the unconquerable walls of Constantinople, marched his army into this valley in 1462, he didn't find a battle. He found a nightmare. He turned his horse around and retreated, famously remarking that he could not win a war against a man who would do this to his own people. History calls this man a monster, a demon, the real-life inspiration for Dracula. But to understand Vlad III, we have to look past the blood. We have to look into the mind of a child who was sold by his own father. We have to look at the psychological trauma that turns a prince into a butcher. Vlad wasn't born with a stake in his hand. He was built. And today, we are going to tear down the myth to find the man and the broken psyche hidden underneath. To understand Vlad's descent, we have to go back to 1442. Vlad is only 11 years old. He is the son of Vlad II, known as Dracul, the dragon. In the 15th century, the term carried a dual meaning. It stood for the prestigious Order of the Dragon, a crusading group sworn to protect Christianity. But in the local tongue, it also meant the devil. Vlad and his younger brother, Radu, grew up in a world where the floor was always shifting. Their home, Wallachia, was a tiny strip of land caught between two titans, the Christian Kingdom of Hungary and the Islamic Ottoman Empire. In a moment of political desperation, Vlad's father did the unthinkable. To secure his throne, he traveled to the Ottoman court and brought his two young sons as collateral. He handed them over to Sultan Murad II as human insurance. Think about the psychological impact on an 11-year-old boy. Modern child psychologists would categorize this as severe attachment trauma. In an instant, the two people Vlad was supposed to trust most, his father and the Sultan, became his captors. His father essentially traded his children's lives for a crown. For Vlad, the world was no longer a place of safety or morality. It was a marketplace of betrayal. This was the first fracture in his mind, the realization that even the people who love you will sell you if the price is right. For the next 6 years, Vlad and Radu were political hostages, but they weren't kept in a dungeon. They were given the finest education in the world. They were taught logic, philosophy, and the art of war. But while they were learning about the light of the world, they were witnesses to its absolute darkness. In the Ottoman court, they saw how an empire was held together. It wasn't through the divine right of kings or the love of the peasantry. It was through the cold, calculated application of the spectacle of terror. They witnessed the Sultan's janissaries, an elite army of slaves, and they saw the specific Ottoman punishment for treason: impalement. Here, the psyche of the two brothers diverged in a fascinating way. Radu, known as the Handsome, adapted. He became a favorite of the Sultan's son, Mehmed. He converted to Islam and embraced the culture of his captors. He sought safety through assimilation. But Vlad resisted. He was rebellious, frequently beaten, and constantly threatened with death. Historians suggest Vlad developed what we might call paranoid personality disorder. He grew up in a state of hypervigilance, expecting a blade in the back at every turn. While Radu learned to love the hand that fed him, Vlad learned to study it, so he would know exactly where to bite it when the time came. He didn't just see the stakes as a form of execution. He saw them as a language, a way to communicate power when you are outnumbered. He was a student of the Ottoman School of Terror, and he would eventually become its greatest graduate. In 1448, Vlad is finally released. He returns to Wallachia not as a hero, but as a ghost. While he was away, the world he knew had been wiped out. His father had been hunted down and murdered in the marshes by his own noblemen, the Boyars. But the fate of his older brother, Mircea, was even worse. Mircea had been captured, his eyes burned out with red-hot irons, and then he was buried alive. When Vlad stepped back onto his native soil, he didn't find a family. He found a graveyard. Psychologists who study the lives of dictators often point to this kind of point of no return. Vlad was now a man with nothing left to lose. The trauma of his hostage years was now compounded by a burning, righteous fury. We often think of Vlad's cruelty as insane, but looking through the lens of psychology, it was actually highly logical. Vlad took the throne of a land that was lawless. Theft was rampant, the nobility was treacherous, and the commoners were broken. Vlad decided that if he couldn't be loved, he would be absolute. Consider the famous Easter feast of 1457. Vlad invited the noble boyars, the very men who had killed his father, to a grand banquet. They expected a diplomatic peace offering. Instead, after the meal, Vlad's guards seized them. He didn't just kill them, he forced the able-bodied men and women to march into the mountains to build his fortress at Poyenari. They worked until their clothes fell off their backs, until they collapsed from exhaustion. The rest, he impaled them. Why impalement? Experts explain that impalement is a psychosexual and power-based torture. It is a slow, agonizing penetration of the body that keeps the victim alive for days. By placing the stakes in specific patterns, Vlad was turning his victims into a forest of the dead. He once famously remarked, "If I am feared by the right people, we will be strong." He even extended this justice to the most vulnerable. There's a story that he invited all the beggars, the sick, and the poor of the capital to a great hall for a feast. He asked them, "Do you want to be without cares? Do you want for nothing in this world?" When they cheered, yes, Vlad walked out, locked the doors, and burned the building to the ground. In his twisted psyche, he wasn't being cruel. He was curing poverty. He was creating a society where everyone was productive or dead. It worked so well that legend says you could leave a golden cup at a fountain in the middle of the city, and no one would dare touch it. Not because they were honest, but because they could already feel the wood of the stake. In 1462, the bill for Vlad's defiance finally came due. Sultan Mehmed II marched into Wallachia with 60,000 men. Vlad had barely 20,000. He knew he couldn't win on an open field, so he turned the war into a psychological experiment. He poisoned the wells. He burned the crops. He even sent men infected with the plague and leprosy into the Ottoman camps to spread disease. And then came the night attack. Vlad and a small group of his men dressed in Ottoman clothing and infiltrated the enemy camp in the dead of night. Their goal, to assassinate the Sultan in his sleep. Chaos erupted. Men were killing their own comrades in the dark. Vlad missed the Sultan's tent, but the damage was done. He didn't just kill the Ottomans, he broke their minds. For centuries, we thought the stories of Vlad crying tears of blood were just myths created by his enemies to make him seem like a literal demon. But in 2023, science gave us a shocking update. Researchers analyzed the proteins on letters written by Vlad in the 15th century. They found evidence that Vlad likely suffered from a rare medical condition called hemolacria. This is a condition where a person's tears are mixed with actual blood. Imagine the psychological effect this would have had on the people of the 1400s. To see their leader, a man already known for his brutality, literally weeping blood during a sermon or a battle. It would have solidified the idea that he was not human. But it also tells us something about the man. Hemolacria is often exacerbated by extreme stress and inflammation. Vlad was a man under constant, crushing pressure, surrounded by enemies, haunted by the ghosts of his family, and ruling through a system of terror that required him to be a monster 24 hours a day. Vlad was eventually betrayed, not by the Ottomans, but by his own allies. He was imprisoned for years in Hungary, only to return to Wallachia for one final, brief reign before he was killed in battle in 1476. His head was sent to Constantinople, preserved in honey and displayed on a stake. The same fate he had given to thousands. Was Vlad III a hero or a psychopath? In Romania today, he is often remembered as a patriot, the only man who had the stomach to do what was necessary to protect his people. But to the rest of the world, he is the blueprint for the monster. The truth lies in the psyche. Vlad the Impaler is a reminder of what happens when trauma is weaponized. He is a testament to the idea that fear is the most effective tool of control, but it comes at a soul-crushing cost. He didn't choose to be a monster because he loved blood. He chose it because he believed that in a world of darkness, the only thing people fear more than death is the man who controls it. We look for fangs and capes in the legends of Dracula, but the real horror is much more human. It's the story of a child who was abandoned, a man who was broken, and a leader who decided that the only way to save his world was to burn it down.